Yesterday, 343 released some interesting data, and that was that so far, Halo Infinite has had 20 million players. Obviously, this is the total amount of players that have probably launched up the game, and not concurrent players, but this is a very big number, and it also makes Halo Infinite the biggest launch in Halo franchise history. Now, this is definitely pretty cool news, and in this video, we're just going to talk a little bit about this news, what it means, what it doesn't mean, and just compare it to some of the previous Halo games. So, let's hop right in. So, obviously, 20 million players is a very nice number, and that's very respectable for a multiplayer game. Now, we do need to point out that Halo Infinite is the first free-to-play Halo game on the multiplayer side, and it's also the first Halo game to release concurrently both on Xbox and PC. Those two factors alone pretty much meant that if this wasn't the biggest release in Halo franchise history, something would have had to gone very, very wrong. Obviously, though, that doesn't take away from the achievement, and 20 million players is nothing to scoff at, but I just wanted to point out that this was something you could expect a little bit. Now, I would be curious, and obviously the official Halo account's not going to put this out there, but I would love to hear what Microsoft's goals were in terms of a player count for Halo Infinite. Did Halo Infinite hit those numbers? Did it surpass them? Did it not necessarily reach the mark? Now, that would be pretty interesting data, although I think the only place you're probably going to find that is on one of those Microsoft stockholder meetings, and I don't necessarily know if Microsoft goes into detail with all of their Xbox franchises on those, or if they kind of just touch Xbox as a whole. So who knows if we'll ever know if Halo Infinite kind of hit the mark that they were aiming for, or if it surpassed it. Now, obviously, I can't talk about this 20 million player number without at least referencing how the game is currently doing, and as you guys all know, at least on Steam, the player base isn't looking the most healthy. So while the game originally was peaking over 200,000 players concurrently, lately that number is in the low 30,000s, which is definitely a small percentage of the original player base. Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors to this. One, it's a new free-to-play game. These are always going to drop players most likely, unless they have a ridiculous blow up, and even then they usually come back down to earth. And obviously this is just the Steam numbers. While you can kind of track how Halo Infinite is doing on Xbox, there's no real numbers to it, and all you can do is look at the Xbox most games list that just shows it kind of where it places. Currently, at the time of recording this video, is at 5th place behind Fortnite, Modern Warfare, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Apex, which definitely isn't bad, as this does keep it above things like Roblox and Rainbow Six Siege and Forza and even NBA 2K. So these are definitely decent games that it's beating, but like I said, there's no numbers to this like there is the Steam numbers, and that's why a lot of people usually reference the Steam numbers. Obviously, though, this doesn't include Xbox players or people playing on the Microsoft Store. Now, just for reference, at the time of recording this video, Halo Infinite has 32,000 players online, which puts it at the 25th most popular game on Steam, around things like Rocket League, 7 Days to Die, Unturned, Stardew Valley, Terraria. So definitely not small games by any means, but not necessarily the hottest games on Steam like your Counter-Strikes and your Dotas, and even as of today, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, or things like Apex and PUBG. It's definitely fallen kind of a few tiers below those games. Also, with Rocket League specifically, I don't even know if you can still get Rocket League on Steam since they moved it over to Epic. These might literally just be Rocket League players that have had the game on Steam for many, many years. Now, like I said, we don't have the full kind of visibility to the numbers here, so it's hard to kind of judge exactly how Halo Infinite is doing, but I think we can make the finite statement and say that the game is definitely kind of losing players. Could it gain those players back? It definitely could, and I certainly hope so, as we get into the February update that's hopefully going to fix some issues, and even get on to Season 2 when we get some more content. I hope that we see a large portion of these players return back to Halo Infinite, because I just want the game to do well. Now, like I said, the one other thing that I wanted to talk about in this video was comparing the launch of Halo Infinite to those previous Halo launches. Obviously, this is the biggest launch Halo has ever had. Like I said, this was kind of something to be expected. Not only was the game free to play and on PC like I mentioned, also all the recent Halo games have been the biggest Halo games to launch in the franchise, because that's just kind of how gaming works. As gaming continues to get bigger and more mainstream, there's more players there, and therefore there's more people that are gonna pick up a new Halo game when it comes out. The real question is, do those players stick around after a few months or even a year or two down the line when the game isn't brand new and fresh? But that said, I do have some numbers here, and these come from all sorts of different sources, but Halo Combat Evolved originally sold 1 million units as of 2002, and then eventually as of 2005 had sold over 5 million copies. Now remember, this is sold copies as opposed to Halo Infinite, which is just players, because Halo Infinite is free to play and just launching it up counts you as a player, whereas obviously the older Halo games, you actually had to buy the title to kind of get counted in these statistics. Now, Halo 2 obviously took the franchise to a whole nother level, and you could argue that this is where Halo really began being part of the mainstream. As of May 9th, 2006, Halo 2 was the best-selling first-generation Xbox game with 8 million copies sold worldwide, and it's even important to note that Halo 2 was the most popular video game on Xbox Live even during the early Xbox 360 days, and it was only eventually surpassed in 2006 when the Gears of War franchise came out. So then moving on, we had Halo 3. Now Halo 3 absolutely exploded, and as of January 3rd, 2008, Halo 3 had sold 8.1 million copies, and the more recent numbers have that number well over 14 million. So Halo 3 definitely sold a lot of copies. Now moving on to the next mainline Halo title, Halo Reach, that sold 4.7 million units by September of 2011, and more recent numbers on this website have that probably over the 10 million number, which is obviously nothing to scoff at. Moving on to Halo 4, now both Halo 4 and 5, 343 did come out and say that these were the biggest Halo games to launch in the Halo franchise at that time. I remember this vividly because they're a bit more recent and I was a little bit older, whereas opposed to Reach, I don't necessarily remember if Bungie came out and said that, though I would venture it probably was at the time. Now, Halo 4 grossed over $220 million in the first 24 hours of the release alone, making a new record for the series, like I said, and then went on to sell probably a little bit over 10 million copies. And then obviously you had Halo 5, which again was the biggest Halo launch, and as of November 4th, 2015, Halo 5 had sold more than $400 million in global sales, eventually selling similar to Halo 4, probably a little over 10 million copies. So while these numbers for the older games are honestly a pain to find these days because you have to dive through old websites and a lot of articles that aren't even necessarily listed on those websites anymore, I just wanted to show that pretty much all of the recent main Halo games in the franchise were the biggest and fastest selling games to date for the franchise. Halo Infinite has continued that trend. Obviously, being free to play and being on PC isn't going to hurt your chances at continuing that trend, and that's just basically what I wanted to talk about. This is definitely something cool and it's worth celebrating, but it's nothing to be overly ecstatic about. 343 still has a lot of work to do on Halo Infinite to kind of bring this game to where it deserves to be and to stop the player base decline, and I'm hoping that they are able to do that. We'll only find out in the coming months whether or not 343 is able to do that, but like I said, hopefully they are, because I want Halo Infinite to have a long, healthy life. And that's pretty much going to do it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I might do a video in the near future talking about Halo 5 specifically and kind of comparing Halo 5 and its launch directly to Halo Infinite and its launch, because I think there's a lot of interesting parallels you can make, and so it might be a fun deep dive to kind of do. Keep your eye out for that. We'll see if it comes out, but other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like I said, make sure you follow me over on Twitch. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and you can also follow me over on Twitter and Instagram. And with that said, I'll see you all next time.